Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering How Sittin' for Sandy and Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom. Told y'all I got some more infamous episodes that I need to cover because are you serious? Didn't I just get finished reviewing Pet Sitter Pat? And now I got Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom on my line. Oh my god. I have some trepidations going in, but I think this might end up being rather fun. Let's find out. As always, thank you for watching the video today. I mean, y'all know I appreciate your viewership, but I'm still gonna say it every time. And now, let's just get right into it. Starting things off today is How Sittin' for Sandy, which is an episode that I frequently associate with Squirrel Record, so in other words, it's not an episode that I have very strong opinions about, which could mean anything. I guess relatively lately I've seen this episode be brought up more because of a specific joke, but I'll talk about that joke later. Let's just get started. First thing I gotta say is gorgeous background alert. Man, I love those, and I'm gonna point them out every time because I can. Anyway, this beginning scene of the episode is pretty fun, especially because it features my favorite little guy, Gary. I love how this first scene also acts as like an inverse to the typical going to school on a Saturday plot setup, and it also works as a callback to Something Smells. Though SpongeBob takes the day being Sunday much more in stride in that episode than in this one. His utter despair at not being able to go to work is pretty funny, and it's a good setup for this episode showing how SpongeBob needs purpose, which leads nicely into Sandy calling SpongeBob in a scene that I enjoy and asking him if he could house sit for her. I love how SpongeBob just, like, teleports into Sandy's house, not wearing a helmet, might I add. It's a great joke. It's kind of funny how this episode and the previous one, Pet Sitter Pat, have a very similar structure when you think of it on the surface level at least. Character entrusts a significant responsibility onto another character and gives them a detailed task list for fulfilling that responsibility. Said second character eventually disregards that list and causes chaos. But see, at least this episode doesn't have that second character be a smug ass about it, so you might be able to guess which episode I like better. As Sandy shows SpongeBob around her tree dome, I like how they're kind of kindred spirits in their tendency towards organization, as we know SpongeBob can be a little organizational weirdo, and Sandy is very meticulous in how she runs her home. More episodes showing Sandy and SpongeBob being close friends like this, please. I quite enjoyed Mooncation, so if we could, like, do more, that would be great. I especially enjoy seeing different sides of both SpongeBob and Sandy's character coming out with this little similarity between them, so it would be nice to explore more of that too. Anywho, Sandy leaves for the Inventors Convention, and SpongeBob manages to be a good house sitter for the next minute or so, which isn't surprising. This, of course, means that the other shoe is gonna have to drop, something is gonna have to happen in order for chaos to occur, and what else could fit this bill but Patrick, who I'm not exactly happy to see after last episode, or especially because of the similarities between this episode's plot and the last. I don't mind Patrick encouraging SpongeBob into recklessness. I mean, I liked Sandy's rocket after all. But I mean, it has to be funny and enjoyable, and also the stakes in this episode are much, much higher than that one. Not to mention, SpongeBob actually has duties to fulfill in this episode, so it's just worse because of the disrespect to Sandy's home. So all of this is why I'm not exactly excited when Patrick does end up entering the episode. But for 1 second, let me make a little sidebar about that joke I mentioned earlier. So, a few times on Twitter, I've seen people post out of context screenshots of this episode, particularly of SpongeBob in the tree dome with no helmet. Most of the time, this is so the poster can make a modern SpongeBob bad tweet. And every single time, the comments and quotes are flooded with people who clearly haven't watched a modern SpongeBob, aka middle-aged SpongeBob, episode, much less this one. God, these tweets irritate me so bad because in the end, SpongeBob not wearing a helmet is a setup for a joke. A joke that I personally find to be very funny. So all of this is to say that this episode has some good jokes in here, including this one which makes modern SpongeBob haters show their asses every few months. Anyway, that little rant aside, as I was saying before, we get the appearance of Patrick in this episode about 4.5 minutes in, and this did not excite me at all. In fact, I was actively dreading what was to come because now things were going to become very predictable. This episode needed chaos, and they chose the most predictable and least entertaining way possible to do it. I don't even mind predictable, I just mind when it's predictably dull. At least SpongeBob saying no to Patrick was entertaining, but of course he eventually gives in. Imagine if SpongeBob actually did kick Patrick out and then something else happens to cause chaos. That might have been really good, actually. A good subversion for sure. SpongeBob carefully tells Patrick what he is not to do, and while I can see what's going to happen from a mile away, this isn't as bad as it could have been for sure. I do appreciate SpongeBob being really responsible in this episode. I just think how Sittin' for Sandy has come too quickly after Pet Sitter Pat, which makes Patrick even worse to me here than he probably is. Though I will say the "can I" bit annoyed me, or like it would have annoyed me on any day. Anyway, SpongeBob knocks over a bottle, so thankfully I suppose it wasn't Patrick who did it, and this is where chaos begins as Sandy's robots start fighting each other and end up destroying everything, which is definitely not how I expected things to go, so I appreciate the episode being unexpected and how the chaos and disaster played out. SpongeBob is heartbroken over his failure to house sit, which I again appreciate how seriously he took his responsibility here. Sandy then shows up, and she looks shell-shocked, to say the least. Well, until she starts pointing a laser at SpongeBob and Patrick, making them cower in a way I haven't seen since, Wet Painters. Turns out the laser is a handy-dandy status quo machine, and in a bigger plot twist, it turns out that this was all an experiment by Sandy to test this machine. I'd be more fine with this ending if it made more sense, as SpongeBob was doing just fine before Patrick showed up, the Patrick who wasn't there when Sandy left. I'm choosing to believe that Patrick was hiding in Sandy's tree dome the entire time, and Sandy knew about it, or maybe that Sandy just knew that somehow Patrick would worm his way into this anyway. So maybe I do like this ending, if I do enough mental gymnastics anyway. Especially the last joke after Sandy's house gets destroyed for real this time, that was pretty good. House Sittin' for Sandy was a pretty fun episode, and a surefire improvement over the last where Patrick is concerned. I also appreciate SpongeBob a lot in this episode, so that's yet another bonus. But there are a few things not to like here, namely Patrick, to be honest, and a few bad jokes. In general, though, I liked this one. It kind of reminded me of Wet Painters or To Save a Squirrel in a few ways. And so, all of this is why this episode is being put in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.4 out of 10. Alright, now it's the moment I know more of y'all have been waiting for. Let's talk about smooth jazz at Bikini Bottom. So, the first thing I gotta say when it comes to this episode has nothing to do with its content, but rather its name. Because why is it like that? Why is smooth spelled like that? As far as I can tell, that's not how you spell smooth. I decided to look it up right now, or right now in terms of me writing the script anyway. And yeah, since I'm not seeing this spelling with an E in any of the dictionaries, I'm feeling comfortable calling it a misspelling. But what's interesting is the program that I write this on, Google Docs, does not mark smooth, like with an E, as a misspelling, and yet my Notes app does. Kinda interesting. Even weirder is that I'm actually being corrected by Google Docs right now, because now it is marking smooth as a misspelling, but only sometimes. This is getting weird. It's also getting very off topic, so I guess I'll have to be putting a tangent sticker in here. Let's get back to the topic at hand. So, if the first thing I had to say about this episode was a comment about its spelling, then the second thing is a comment about the fact that I quite enjoy jazz. Smooth jazz is not necessarily my go-to when I'm in a jazz mood. I do like more energy in my jazz, but I still love it. And the third thing I have to say in this introduction is probably the most important thing, and that is that I don't know if this episode is infamous or not. Back in the day, I thought people hated this episode, but I know now that that was entirely influenced by one reviewer that I will continue not to name, even if you all know who I'm talking about. In discussions about the worst episodes of this show, I rarely see this episode pop up, although I must admit that I haven't seen those sorts of discussions in some time. Taking a look at the SpongeBob Mania forum, the opinions surrounding this episode are pretty negative, but there are also, not very many of them, with there only being 4 pages of discussion at the time of me writing this script, which is relatively low for an episode with any kind of notoriety. So I truly don't know if this episode is infamous or if it's more just one that's disliked. I guess I lean towards calling it the latter, but that's enough stalling. How about I go deeper? So, y'all already know what I'm gonna say as this episode opens. Gorgeous background shot, just fantastic, love it. Coupled with that smooth jazz, oh yes, this is a vibe. So I'm already liking the vibes that this episode is cultivating, at least for now. The fact that Squidward's socializing is so swayed by the music he's listening to is very amusing. SpongeBob saying the code word for not liking the music, unique, is a bit of a red flag though. Who doesn't enjoy some smooth jazz? Bombastic side-eye. I'm kidding. Mostly. SpongeBob's dramatics about the Kelpie G concert being sold out were fun, and I liked how they were paired with Squidward's faux dramatics before he reveals that he bought a ticket. It is in this moment, where Squidward lampshades the exact thing that's about to happen to him, that Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom begins to lose me. You see, it's not even that Squidward loses the ticket due to some manner of folly. Sure, it's predictable, but as I just said, he was lampshading. This was an intentional joke. No, why I'm irritated is how Squidward loses his ticket, which is, of course, because of fucking Patrick. Not just Patrick, but Patrick doing something absurd and or careless, in this case eating Squidward's ticket when Squidward accidentally shoves his hand into Patrick's mouth because of his own carelessness. Just, why? Why do we have 3 episodes in a row of this kind of behavior? I'm so over it, man. I'm also specifically just not a fan of Squidward's concert experience being immediately ruined like this. Not sure if that makes me hypocritical, since I'm fine with Squidward's life being worsened in other ways, but yeah, this one just bugs me a lot for whatever reason. Things look up again when SpongeBob wins free tickets from the radio, and he offers to bring Squidward with him to the concert. See, now, I like this. If the episode proceeded to be about SpongeBob and Squidward having misadventures at the concert, I think I could have been happy with that, because it's Patrick that's the issue. That's always been the issue, as far as this season goes. I don't know what the hell is going on, but none of Patrick's dynamics and interactions have been hitting right this season. But anyway, let me ignore that for right now and go back to enjoying the SpongeBob and Squidward dynamic that we get here. SpongeBob is very much me when going to concerts, so he doesn't quite fit the vibe of a Smooth Jazz concert. Same, SpongeBob, same. Now, to be fair, I fit the vibe of my concerts because I'm a metal and punk fan, but still. These people could use some excitement, but maybe they're more subdued in their presentation of excitement. People judging Squidward for SpongeBob's actions, though, makes them assholes, just saying, and it's kinda annoying. Just as I was beginning to truly enjoy myself, Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom decides that I wasn't actually irritated enough earlier, so Patrick appears yet again. You see how it wasn't necessary to include him, and yet here he is? Patrick's presence, of course, leads to Squidward's concert experience being completely ruined as he ends up losing his seat and getting kicked out of the show. It's not very pleasant because there's nothing to actually laugh at. Patrick eating SpongeBob and Squidward's backstage passes isn't funny, it's just annoying and boring. If you're gonna have SpongeBob and Squidward lose their backstage passes, make it happen in an interesting and funny way. And it doesn't help that Patrick somehow gets away with everything he does, but SpongeBob and Squidward don't. Like, why does Patrick get crowd surfed, but SpongeBob gets booed before the concert even begins, might I add? It's nonsensical, and since I'm already not laughing, that ends up hindering the scene rather than boosting it up. As you might have picked up on now, that sort of thing can be a double-edged sword when it comes to this show. At least SpongeBob and Squidward manage to get backstage after Patrick somehow leaves it, though they are quickly stopped by KelpyG's manager. And then we get another sequence that is not entertaining, which ends with Squidward at first groveling and then trying to bargain his way into meeting KelpyG through his clarinet playing. Of course, no one likes Squidward's clarinet playing, but SpongeBob's ukulele? Well, you see, that's actually good. And see, I don't mind SpongeBob winning in this episode because I like seeing him win, but it's weird to see SpongeBob win and Squidward lose when, for the most part, they've been working as a single unit throughout this entire episode, with Patrick playing more of a quote-unquote antagonistic role. Now, of course, at the end, Squidward does earn his loss because of his ego getting in the way, but other than that, everything is pretty unsatisfying regarding Squidward, and that's this episode's big problem. It's not satisfying, and instead is annoying. Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom was not that good. It has its moments for sure, but overall there's just so much unpleasant stuff in here, particularly where Patrick is concerned. If the Patrick stuff was gone, this episode would have been great, actually. Seeing Squidward and SpongeBob be on the same page is always a treat, but I didn't really get to enjoy it since they didn't really do anything with them, but instead kept having Patrick come in and ruin something else about the concert. And so I think that this episode works best being put in my mediocre tier, where it comes in with a score of 5.6 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Did you know that KelpyG was voiced by Roger Bumpus? I didn't. Some great voice work there, which I suppose isn't surprising given the excellent caliber of voice acting on this show in general. I can see why Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom isn't an infamous episode. I don't like it, but it doesn't really have all the hallmarks of an infamous episode anyway. It's kind of tame in a lot of regards. And especially being so close to a really notorious one, I can see why this one has somewhat flown under the radar. I think that's just about all I've got for y'all today. I put all the rants and tangents in the actual reviews themselves this time, so I guess it's about time that I close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.